Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate how to create an empty web app with some static content and with Visual Studio. So this isn't as straightforward maybe with as using just a folder and writing things directly with a text editor. So there's a few things we have to do that's a little bit different that will work well for .NET web development. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new application, and what we're going to want is an ASP.NET Core empty application to begin with. And you'll notice this allows us to actually build in a whole bunch of different um, things. And this just starts off as an empty application. Or actually, yeah, we want this one here, ASP.NET Core empty. Not to be confused with ASP.NET Core Web App or some of these others. These other ones will have too much in it to do things with when we're just experimenting with simple HTML pages. So once we do that, give it a name. I'm going to just make it HTML demo and pick where you want it to store, and then leave the solution name the same. And I'm going to leave .NET 5 current as the version. Depending on when you actually do this demo, you may have a different version up here. For the purposes we're doing with this kind of a demo, it's probably not super critical what the framework is. And then, let me see actually, what do we have here? Oh, we have Core and we have .NET 5.0, which is actually .NET 5.0 is another Core, another version of Core. They just decided to drop the term Core, so it's along those lines. So I'm going to create this application, and you're going to get a very empty application. In fact, there's really only a couple files in here. App settings, program, CS. And if we look at, and this in .NET Core, the web application is really just a console application. And you'll notice that just like a console application, you have main. And it calls a method that is defined in here called create host builder. This is actually building your web server. And it creates this and then does, and you can see that the iHost builder actually basically is an implementation of this default host builder object. And you'll notice that we have here this use startup. Well, what's that? We're actually very rarely ever going to put any code in here. Most of the startup code will be in the startup class. They just did this to kind of make it so that we can have the startup class, which does all of our startup activities. And in here, there's some information on how this is structured here. You can go look at that. We don't have any services to configure, with this very basic one. And they start off by using routing and then use endpoints. And if you were to run this right now, which I will, if I run this just as it is, you can see it says hello world. And it does that just by response.write async hello world. And it's literally, if you can actually if I look at this page, let's see, can I view source? I'll inspect it. There's the head block, body. It ends up that when you do a response.write, it actually kind of does this within this code automatically itself. And you could actually put all of your web page stuff in here. That would be painful. So what we're going to do is we're going to convert this back to just to work more like a typical web server, where it's just offering up static files. And to do that, we're going to replace all of this routing and use endpoints with app.use file server. And when you do this, now it's just serving up web pages as a normal server would, just serving up pages. Later on, we're going to not use that, and you're going to see that there's a whole bunch of other things we're going to do because we want .NET to do its thing. But for now, when we're just playing around with HTML pages, just replace all that with use file server, enable all static file middleware, except directory browsing for the current request path. So once we do that, then what we can do is we need to, by default, what file server is looking for is a folder called www.root. So we're going to right click on the project, and we're going to make a folder directly into the project called www.root. And then you'll notice it actually recognizes that as a special folder because it changes its icon. And then typically in here, we will add a few other folders. We're not going to use them in this demo, but because they normally are there, and almost every website's going to have these, we're going to add a CSS folder. We're going to add a JS folder for any JavaScript we might have in the future. And then we're going to add a image folder where our images will be located. And then under www, and these we're just putting there because eventually we'll probably use them. Actually, I think we normally would make this plural. I like it to be plural because it'll be multiple images. And then in here, we're going to add a new item. And just to have a landing page, by default, the typical starting page, we're going to pick an HTML page. If you can't find that, you can click on ASP.NET Core, Web, and Content, and that'll bring up HTML page. And we're going to call this HTML page index.html. And the nice thing about Visual Studio is it will stub out a typical page. It's not bad to memorize what this is and be able to write that from scratch, but Visual Studio does a lot of work for us. And what we're going to do is in the title block of the head block, this is going to not be a title that shows up inside the page. This will be the text that will show up in our browser tab. And then here, we'll just put an H1 element, header element here, and we'll just say, welcome to my homepage. Just to have something to see, otherwise we'll have an empty page if we don't have any actual things to see here. And then you can hit Control F5. And that will bring up your browser. And what you'll notice is now we have our page. And we can see welcome to my homepage showed up here. And we can see that what's under title in the head block ended up here. And let's see, view page source. If you right click and view page source, you can see that what this page actually ended up exactly as written inside of our browser when we ran it. And so now you can use this to just work with basic HTML and experiment with putting in some elements. Maybe I'll go here to lipsum.com and ask for let's ask for 2 paragraphs. And it'll just generate some text for me to use here. And I'll make these into 2 separate paragraphs. And if you hit Control A, Control K, Control F, it'll actually format everything for you. So Visual Studio is a really nice web editor. And so now we have 2 blocks of text, welcome to my homepage, some paragraph tags. Hit Control F5, and now we have a web page. So you can use this now. Realize that everything that you create that would normally be for a static website It has to be in the www root folder. You can put your pages and put your links, and they should work. Just to illustrate how you would make some additional pages, if you go under, let's say I want another HTML page, we're going to make an about page. So I'm going to create a new item. And I'll make another HTML page. And let's say that we wanted an about page. We'll call it about.html. And, you know, I'll make the index be about, and maybe make an h1 about this site. Make a paragraph in here. I'll just borrow some of this boilerplate code here, or text here. I'll just throw it in there just to kind of demonstrate. Control K, Control A, select everything, Control K and Control F. We'll tab everything in nicely. I'll save that. And so now I have a second page. If I click on this, how do I get to that second page? Well, by default, it goes to the index page. If I want to get to about.html, I can add about.html to here, and that now goes to my about page. To go back to index, I could go either to index.html, or because index.html is always the default, if I just go to the domain, it'll bring me right here. So that works. Let's say I wanted to jump from the index.html to about. Well, I can do that with an anchor tag. And I'll put a paragraph tag here, and then I'm going to make an anchor tag, which is A. We put an href element. And the nice thing about Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio, is when it detects that I want to put in a link, and it gives me, it actually lists what I need here for things that are in this root folder. So notice that this is the directory structure of the root folder. Well, I want to go to the about, and I can just click that and note it, and this is a relative reference. That means it's going to look for this page in the same folder as here. If it was a page on another site, we would have to put out fully qualified href. And then, you know, I put in what I want. So now if I do that, we can see that I have my welcome page, and I now have this anchor tag, this link. If I click on this, it takes me to the site. And I could do the same thing here and go back and forth between these two pages. Let's say I wanted to go to cnm.edu. Well, what I can do is I can copy this URL, and then I could maybe add a and notice that because this CNM's page is on a separate server, I have to put the full URL here to go to that one. And so now when I run this, I have a link to CNM, and it'll go there. Now note that this ended up on the same line. I really would rather have this be on two separate lines. So if I make these two separate put these links in two separate paragraph tags, they will now show up on separate lines, which probably looks better. And now I can go to CNM, or I can go to the about, and just showing you that so that you can see that as you create more pages, you just stack them up under here. And you'll be able to, I'm going to put some links to some other tutorials that will walk you through learning more about all of the different tags there are for HTML. So that is how we create a static HTML page and make it work with ASP.NET Core. Thank you very much.